Welcome to a special edition of To the Contrary.
Muslim women in America. First, what lures young Islamic women to terrorism? Then, behind the headlines, is choosing to wear the hijab becoming feminist? And Islamic women pushing to discuss sex more openly.
Bay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. In this edition, we feature an all-Muslim panel. Up first, women and global terrorism.
More and more women throughout the world are participating in terrorist and extremist groups, and social media is playing a key role in the trend. That information from a reporter for The Voice of America, quoting leading experts speaking at the U.S. Institute for Peace. Coercion was cited as the primary reason most women join violent extremist groups. Other reasons cited were women seek a sense of identity and belonging. One expert noted young women in the U.S. who belong to families from non-Western countries tend to suffer from identity crises, making them vulnerable to alluring social media messages and images from terrorist pitches. We should note a total of 80 U.S. residents were linked to terrorism motivated by Islamic extremism in 2015. That represents a nearly 200% increase from the previous year. That from the Anti-Defamation League. Meanwhile, the Citadel, South Carolina's prestigious public military college, barred a potential female Muslim student from wearing a hijab.
So, Manal Omar, welcome back to the panel.
Thank you.
Who is winning the hearts and minds of American Muslim girls? Is it U.S. culture or ISIS?
I think what's really exciting is that U.S. Muslim girls, like a lot of women across the Muslim world, are saying that those aren't our only two options. So neither. They're creating new options, they're creating their own culture, and they're trying to share it with the community at large.
I completely agree with Manal. We have to remember the diversity of Muslim women. They can't be fit into a box or two boxes.
And we have all the options, and the hearts and minds of Muslim American women are influenced by all of our global policies and discussions. There is no one factor.
My concern is that the government of Qatar is winning the hearts and minds of Muslim women in America and in the world, that we have a hegemony that is existing, that's coming out of our Gulf states, that is trying to put scarves on our heads and to control what we think about the world in a victim culture.
Why do you say Qatar?
I say Qatar because we have recognized for 40 years that the government of Saudi Arabia has been exporting to the world a very disturbing interpretation of Islam. And now, below the radar, the government of Qatar has been exporting millions of dollars of their education material and their own propaganda. And I find it very disturbing. I find it disturbing in a way in which it is creating a narrative that is very anti-West, anti-American, and very pro-Islamist.
Are you saying, is this where, because I think a lot of people think ISIS certainly got its initial funding from Saudi Arabia, right? Not from Qatar?
Well, Qatar has been supporting a lot of this extremism for the last 30 years, and very much to the ignorance of a lot of people. One of our disturbing facts that a lot of people have just forgotten is that we had an FBI agent land in Doha, Qatar, some years ago to pick up Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The government of Qatar picked up the phone, called him, and he escaped, and 9/11 happened. And so these details in history that we're ignoring, and I do believe that Muslim women are one of those commodities that this government wants to also control.
Now, you have spoken several times on the show about girls and terrorism. I figure I see you as the world's expert as far as I'm concerned, because you yourself were recruited by predecessors of ISIS online in the late 90s.
Well, I mean, you always have people who are online trying to target and lead to extremism. I think the challenge
is that working as well now, or are efforts to thwart that having any effect?
I think that you're beginning to see more efforts to thwart it, but I think the underlying assumption and what the problematic area in terms of the description that you just gave, Ashra, is that you're falling into the same trap of ISIS. The assumption that these young women don't have brains of their own. No amount of money, no amount of co-opting is brainwashing these women to make decisions. They're very intelligent, they're very empowered. I mean, I've been in the camps, whether it's in Kenya or whether it's in Syrian camps in Jordan and in Turkey, and none of these women have the luxury of victimhood. They're powerful and they're making choices whether we want to admit it or not.
Seriously, like the 300 girls who were kidnapped?
I mean, again, I'm talking about women who are the actual survivors who get outside of conflict, right? So when you're in the conflict zone, those women who are kidnapped, but I'm sure you've interacted with some of the Yazidi women who escaped. And those women are also, they don't have the luxury of victimhood. They're actually finding ways to reincorporate into their communities. They've been on the Hill lobbying, talking about the horrors.
They were women in the world. They're speaking out and organizing after being sex slaves to ISIS for like 13 months or something. I mean,
but let's get back to American Muslim girls, because this is so important to our audience and to this country. You both agreed that they're starting their own culture. They're not really adopting U.S. culture. They're not buying into ISIS either. Is that good if they're developing a culture that's separate from normal American teenage girls of all kinds of diverse backgrounds? How good is it for Muslim girls to have their own culture?
Well, it's always so weird when you have to explain this to somebody that isn't Muslim, because I mean, I'm an American Muslim now, and I see American Muslim girls all the time. I guess I'm an American Muslim woman.
Yes.
Older woman. Not a girl anymore. But anyhow, my daughter is, and I'm like, I don't know, she's in soccer practice. Like, everyone's doing something different. So what's happening on the internet to maybe some Muslim girls who aren't integrating, don't feel like they belong here? I mean, don't we all go through these questions in our teens?
Well, certainly all immigrant kids
but it cannot
absolutely all other. You know, I mean, you look at women of color, like the Black women movement really created their own thing. You look at Latinas. I mean, for the longest time, I thought I was Black in South Carolina, and then I thought I was Latina, and then I tried to be Daisy until I finally landed, and my mom's like, you're Arab. What's no confusion?
Well, I tried to be Arab in college.
Identity. Yeah. And that's a lot of what's going on, and I think it's the beauty of America. That's why America is so diverse culturally.
I was going to say, as a young Muslim American woman, I grew up and I was not influenced by Qatar at all. I couldn't
care. Even know where it was.
I know, I couldn't care less what they were doing across the world. I mean, I grew up here, and you know, we adopted some of American culture. Some, like, you know, we read teen magazines. We read, like, you know, we grew up with that. And then we also had our Muslim roots. We would go on to Sunday school, or like our families brought up with our traditional.
Evolving. Right, it's changing. I mean,
So I think that we have to recognize it's not about people being brain dead. It's actually the disturbing part. This is a conversation also about terrorism, and this is a very serious conversation that isn't just about, you know, fashion shows and these other ideas. There are women, Muslim women, being recruited by very serious radicalization efforts that are very much directed from people that are ideologues. And the choice is what is actually disturbing to me. It's not about people being brain dead. It's actually about people intentionally choosing this. And it's not only about radicalization, but to me, the normalization of very puritanical values. And so we'll have a conversation about this, but this increasing, you know, acceptance of the headscarf, this increasing acceptance of this idea that women are the carriers of morality in the community is disturbing to me.
I think wearing a headscarf doesn't lead you to join ISIS.
That's very.
I don't think that's
not what I said.
But that's where you learn.
And you're using it as an indicator.
That is not at all what I was saying. What I was saying is that these radicalization efforts include the headscarf. What does Boko Haram do? The first thing, what is the first thing that they do?
Nothing.
They put a scarf on women.
That's a dangerous statement
to
make.
I know.
And it leads into all.
Wait, everybody. Nobody can hear you when everybody talks like that.
And I think this idea of trying to frame it as dangerous, this idea that trying to conflate it all together as if it is a argument that I'm making, that the headscarf then makes you a terrorist. Why would I be sitting here next to you with the American flag if I believe that? I don't believe that. What I do know is that the ideology of political Islam that is being exported by the governments of Iran, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia includes, as part of their formula for the Muslim woman and the Muslim girl, the headscarf. And this is something that we don't need to conflate as if you wear the headscarf, that means you actually embrace that idea. What I'm saying is that it is an impact on society, and I would really
we'll
appreciate,
get to that.
I would
we'll
really
get to that,
appreciate it if
but
you guys don't misrepresent what I'm trying to say.
Okay, understood, and we'll get to that in the second segment. But for right now, are young girls, when they're being asked to wear the headscarf, whether by their family, by their mom, by whatever, are you saying that's a pathway to being lured into terrorism?
No, that's exactly what I'm not saying. Okay. What I am saying is that those that want to recruit girls and women use this mechanism. That doesn't mean that people who put the scarf on are putting it on that pathway. I don't want this reversed, okay? That's really important to me. But it's really clear that ISIS wants to put a scarf on every one of our heads, if not a face veil. You expressed disturbance earlier at seeing a woman in a full face veil,
in a niqab, right? Only a niqab for her eyes.
And that's the ideology that I'm talking about. And if you want to misrepresent what I'm saying so that we don't have this conversation, then I find that more disturbing than having the conversation.
Back to terrorism,
so
girls,
what I was trying
U.S. culture.
What I was trying to explain before we went on that topic, which is very different, is that there's a difference in what I think you're conflating is not necessarily scarf or non-scarf, but recruitment from living under Islamic law, which ISIS is doing. When ISIS comes in terms of one of the first steps is enforcing the scarf and enforcing sometimes even the niqab in the most harshest and barbaric terms. What they do with recruitment is very different. They have this really powerful messaging, which is, it doesn't matter how you live, it matters how you die. And they show women in clubs when women's short, and they show men who are doing drugs, and they're saying, live the way you want. And this is different from recruitment and living under the law. They're saying, if you want to redeem yourself, what better way of a suicide bomb? It doesn't matter how you live, it matters how you die. And so their recruitment strategies targeting women is very, very different than living under their community.
Last word, Saba.
Well, I was going to say, as an American Muslim woman, I started wearing the scarf because my friends were wearing it. And it was just like growing up, my cousins were wearing it, so I thought it was cool to try it. And then it just became part of my identity. It was not because some person in Qatar reached out to me or like
and not because of anything that the Quran says?
No, nothing. And my mom didn't even cover at the time. I started wearing it because it was cool. And it was just, the thing to make my own identity in this country as a Muslim American woman. And I think that's what's more important to me and Muslim American girls here.
Okay, clear. Thank you for that. The debate over when and where women can be veiled is certainly intensifying. To the contrary, went behind the headlines to better understand the decision Islamic women make. We spoke with two journalists with opposing ideologies. Their views lead one to wonder whether the choice to wear or not wear the hijab is a feminist issue.
It's a reappropriation of sort of something that is part of a religion, but for women who choose to wear the hijab, who make informed decisions as adults, they sort of reject a very commercially lucrative notion that women's power resides in their sexual allure.
Freelance journalist Hana Youssef began wearing her hijab at the age of 21, following 4 years of research and contemplation. Her viral video sparked conversation about the effect Western culture has on the headscarf. Youssef, who lives in England, says her decision to wear a hijab did not stem from oppression.
And I've experienced people sort of undermining my abilities or my choices because they assume that I can't think for myself or that I'm oppressed or that there's someone else behind me making decisions for me. So it's just my way of saying, look, not all Muslim women are like this. There are, as I in the video, there are women who are forced to do certain things they don't want to, but I don't think that is such a problem in the West.
Youssef lives in London and says she received some backlash for her choice.
From what I've experienced, there's a lot of social pressure to not wear it, especially if you're an ambitious, educated woman who wants to sort of move up in the world and do things. Pressure to not wear the hijab is just as oppressive as pressure to wear it.
According to the Pew Research Center, there are some 1 million Muslim women in America. Of those women, 36% wear the hijab all the time, 24% some of the time, and 40% choose not to wear it. In contrast, more than 55% of women in predominantly Muslim nations such as Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey wear a hijab all of the time. Though the reasons differ, societal and educational pressures often stop women from unveiling.
They brainwash you in a way to say that you're not a good person if you do not wear hijab. Yeah, I choose to, take off my scarf because I just told myself that if you want to be a good person, that doesn't mean that you have to wear something that you do not believe in it.
Iranian journalist Masih Alinejad was forced to wear her hijab at the age of 7. In most Muslim-majority countries, girls begin wearing headscarves before they reach puberty. Iran is one of many nations where women are still legally required to wear a hijab in public.
Hijab is going to become, how can I say, your identity, part of your body. It's not that easy, just, take it off. It means, you're going to cut off part of your body. I always worry about my family, even my neighbors in the village, my colleagues in Iran, my people. How are they going to judge me? They're going to say that Masih is westernized. I replaced my hijab with a black hat, my so-called hijab. And then it took me 2 years to throw the black hat away and be myself. Why? Because when they force you to be someone else, it's not that easy to express yourself in a free country.
In 2014, Alinejad created the Facebook page My Stealthy Freedom to encourage other women to remove their headscarf.
In this Facebook page, women became their own media, became their own storytellers. As a woman growing up in a traditional society, I always, being told that keep quiet and not be loud. But I want women to be loud and speak out about their body, about their identity. On my Stealthy Freedom page, these women started to expose, their opinion and their ideas. By creating My Stealthy Freedom, we want to show the rest of the world that our freedom is just happening in secret.
Despite opposing views, both women believe there's one overarching reality, a woman's choice.
I think every woman should be able to decide for herself what she wears and have that choice respected and not undermined.
For more than 30 years, I was forced to wear hijab. And when you're free, you just realize that you've been someone else. You are not yourself.
You mentioned in a webisode that we taped earlier before the show that a Muslim woman is not supposed to show her hair because she might sexually arouse a man. So is the hijab, in your view, all placing the burden on a woman to somehow control men's unbridled sexuality, the fact that they're going to see you and want to rape you or have sex with you or something, and that's the woman's burden to try to prevent?
Yeah, that is the assumption of the headscarf. The hijab does not even mean headscarf. It's this word that has been usurped by these ideologues that are trying to put these scarves on our heads. And they are working with this basic assumption that we are too sexy for our hair. That if we reveal our hair, then we will possibly sexually arouse a man. And so this is our aura. This is our forbidden zone. And unfortunately, what happens is there becomes a second and third degree order of problems. In Iran now, a woman has not been allowed to go on in parliament because they have now revealed pictures of her with her hair showing because she's become illegal.
I disagree because I think the headscarf is not necessarily linked to the political ideologues. We're required to cover our hair whenever we pray. Every single Muslim around the world, you have to cover your hair when you pray.
We aren't. That's your interpretation, but it's not
the vast majority of Muslims have to cover. Yeah. Most Muslim women, when you go to a mosque, you have to cover your hair.
Well, that's part of the problem.
And I've been to churches in Italy where they also make you cover
nuns cover their hair. Jewish women wear wigs.
Nuns don't always cover their hair anymore.
Well, that's their issue.
That's their choice.
I know, it's like, but that's a part of our faith. Islam tells us.
But
to
let me
cover our
ask you
head.
this, Manal, you are one of the biggest feminists I know.
Absolutely.
You are one of the most brilliant women I know. You are one of the most interesting panelists I know. But when I have to admit this, and I've spoken with feminist leaders about this, when Muslim women wear the scarf in America, American women feel like you're holding American women back.
Absolutely.
And American women's progress to be free back. Do you take that into account?
Absolutely. And it's not just American women. I remember when I was in Hadramaut in Yemen, which is a remote part of Yemen, Yemeni women who were feminists came up to me and they were frustrated. They say, our men are pointing at you and they're saying, you're living in America and you're arriving in Hadramaut covered, and we as Yemeni women have chosen not to. So it's truly divided women out. And that's really painful for me because we can't be divided. We need the hardcore secularists.
But you're never going to get the women the feminists in the United States to wear headscarves. It's not happening.
I don't want them to. My sister doesn't wear a headscarf. I think what I would like people to do is respect each other's choices. Don't undermine me. I'm so tired of people telling me you did it as a fetish, you did it for identity, you did it to be different, you did, and men coming and being like, you're not doing it good enough, you're wearing these tight pants, your hair is showing in the interview. Lay off the way I dress. I'm so over this conversation. Judge me on my actions. Am I liberal? Am I a feminist? Am I a hardcore Hillary supporter? Amen, I am. So why are you completely dismissing me based on my choices of how I cover my hair or not cover my hair? I'm very liberal in my interpretation. I tend to really waver. I mean, you've seen me in different styles. I love to play with the color, with the scarf, tying it back, wearing hats. Or you
can be a conservative Republican woman and cover your hair.
I think the hijab is not feminist. The woman is feminist.
Absolutely.
So whatever, I grew up in Bangladesh. Nobody ever covered, but now it's 2016. Hello, there's something called globalization, and we're seeing niqabs, and there's a lot of Muslim fashion going on. And I think it's offensive to tell grown women who have decided to cover that it's it's a fetish or it's offensive or they're holding themselves back.
I'll tell you what I find.
Last word.
I think you've spoken a lot. It is so offensive.
Wait.
It is so offensive.
Well, I think we're going to have to compete in our offenses, aren't we?
Well, you've got to speak a lot more than I have. It is offensive.
I think it's not about time. It's about ideology. Well, can I just tell you something?
Women.
You can try to out-shout me on this point, but the truth is ultimately what is most offensive is that there is an ideology that has decided that we are the
we
vessels.
love our headscarves.
We are you know what? Love it if you want.
Let her speak.
Love it if you want, but this is a real serious problem, and it ultimately leads to honor killings. It leads to the fact that girls don't get to go to school, and it leads to
All right, we have to go on that note. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnier Bay. From modesty to sex talk.
Muslim women are stepping out of the shadows on an important but taboo subject, sex. A New York Times op-ed called Sex Talk for Muslim Women is igniting controversy and praise for award-winning Egyptian-American journalist Mona El-Tahawi. In a frank, personal recollection, El-Tahawi discusses her decision to have sex before marriage in defiance of Islamic law and teachings. She's happy about her choice and says she receives messages from other Muslim women experiencing similar issues. She's calling for greater candor and acceptance in her community. The piece has already faced censorship in the Muslim world. Pakistan's Express Tribune chose not to run it and to replace it with a blank space. An anonymous senior source was quoted as saying the paper, quote, cannot afford to publish such controversial articles about Islam, end quote.
So why is this getting such a backlash?
Talking about sex in Islam, I think this has always been a kind of a controversial subject, but I have to say that I am high five to these women. There was another article about having sex in Pakistan, and now Mona Al-Tahawi's piece in the New York Times. High five to these women, because we need to have a conversation. I don't think women are allowed to have sexual and pleasure are not two words that go together.
And I think it really goes to what you were saying earlier in terms of this is patriarchy. I mean, what we're hearing in terms of shaming, in terms of really trying to control women's sexuality, it's not limited to Islam. It's something that we've really struggled. And if anything, I mean, one of the things that I'm now creating is a fellowship for women's sexuality in Islam. And what I'm telling women is have faith in your faith. Ask the hard questions. Cross those red lines. And if you don't find answers, then you should demand the right answer or leave the faith. But not asking, not crossing the red line is no longer an option. And I think women's sexuality is one of the most beautiful gifts and something we need to tap into to really begin to heal the world.
Well, I've crossed that red line personally in my life. I am a walking scarlet letter in my faith. In Pakistan, I became pregnant after the 9/11 attacks, and I became a criminal because it is the Islamic law of Pakistan that says that a woman who has a child out of wedlock is a criminal. And so it is patriarchy, but unfortunately, religion is being used as a vehicle. And I think that the conversation that we had earlier about the headscarf is very much connected, because if we have an assumption of women as vessels of the honor and chastity of a community, we're never going to have these conversations about sex. Women are never going to be able to own issues of reproductive rights and sexual rights. And this is why this is a conversation that has to happen from the head covering to our intimate spaces in our bedrooms.
Last 20 seconds, Saba.
I think adultery is forbidden in Islam. I think moral and haya, the concept of that is very strong in our faith. And so for me, I feel like I think a woman's sacredness should be preserved.
All right, that's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week. The mics are still up.